are going to talk about helping you stop the revolving door. That's today's subject. I'm Cindy Davidson. I'm Director of Business Solutions here at Corexcel, and I'm here with Marilyn Santana. The webinar is being recorded, but your personal participation in the session or anything you give us through chat or whiteboard, your personal information is not attached to that. So your chat, again, won't be recorded. If you communicate through chat, please use the participants, all participants, or the panelist option so Marilyn can see your chats and help me respond to you. So today we are going to talk about hiring better and the role of validated data-driven selection tools, what makes a pre-hire assessment valid and reliable, what the PXT Select assessment measures and why it matters, and how it can really help you not only hire but onboard more successfully. And a lot of organizations are intimidated by data-driven tools, but we're going to show you how you can get started, and it's pretty simple. So today, many people in our country and around the world, we spend a lot of time at work, don't we? Workplaces have become our second homes. Our project teams are our work families. And although every workplace is unique, we all have common goals. And we all want our workplace to be a great place to work, right? And great organizations know that getting there begins with hiring the right people. So organizations that have the right people will kind of identify that as, guess what, we have high-performing people, high-performing individuals, which makes them into high-performing teams. Actually, a 2015 Gallup report states that high performers have several things going for them. These won't be any surprises to you, right? They're engaged, and they're in roles where their job aligns with their talents. Makes sense, right? So how are employees doing getting high performers? They're really discovering that they can't rely on the resume and interview alone. And many of you on the line, I think, would have to have a lot of experience with that. Very difficult to make hiring decisions. And talent leaders aren't really convinced that they're measuring the quality of hiring effectively. 1 in 5 new hires are not optimal, or they themselves have regretted decisions. And that's according to hiring managers on their team, according to the Corporate Executive Board report. So we're going to talk just a minute about the cost of bad hiring. So, and I'm going to take you to a whiteboard and a little bit about whiteboards if you haven't used them before. You will see on the left of the whiteboard, you'll see a big AA. That's pretty much what you want to hit on, because I'm going to ask you just to give me your response. So let me know what you think your turnover cost is. That's what I'd like to hear about first before I give you some statistical information. Taking into consideration, the person's salary, the fact that they kind of leave mentally before you've got time, usually after. Unfortunately, you can't usually hire somebody the day that somebody's last day is. And the fact that sometimes there are severances involved, sometimes there are legal fees. How much does it really cost you when you turn over a mid-level management position? What do you think it is? Can you go to the whiteboard and kind of give me some ideas here? $25,000. Just click anywhere on the whiteboard. If you hit somebody or if you're typing over, You can always just try it somewhere else. 80 to 100K, 20,000. Anybody else want to come in? We won't keep these open very long. 2 times their annual salary. Okay, a little bit all over the board here. A well-known recruiter puts the cost at $240,000. I know that sounds staggering, but again, if you think about the hiring cost, total comp that the individual's in, other factors, and again, the fact that you've got to hire somebody and then get them up to speed, what is it really? Now, the U.S. Department of Labor is a little bit more moderate in their price, and they're saying it's 30% of an employee's first-year earnings. I've certainly heard it more commonly put at 2 to 3 times an annual salary. But especially for small companies, an investment in the wrong person can just be a threat to the business, especially if somebody is in a highly visible position, which many times every position is in a small organization. So again, we know that hiring comes with risks, and so what's a bad hire? The risk may be even higher for someone who is a mediocre hire, because again, we're striving to give you a way to hire a top performer. And so remember, this is painful too, and these folks can be particularly painful because they often fly under the radar. They may improve slightly after being redirected, but usually last a short period of time. And the other issue is it's just, it's not as clear cut as when you have somebody that is clearly not a good fit. When it's mediocre, it takes a little bit longer for that process to take its course. And these folks usually don't quit, because they think they are not a mediocre hire. So just getting into the importance of data, I'm going to take you through a hypothetical, but I think it's a pretty realistic example. I hope you can relate to it. Let's talk about Ben, all right? Ben applies for a manager position at your company. He submits a polished resume, has an impressive background. Gosh, in the interview, he seems like a real team player, positive. His references all check out. He seems perfect because he's done the job before, and you're thinking, wow, he has the experience. He can just come right in and help my younger, more inexperienced supervision. So you hire him. Well, a couple months go by, and you're not seeing this tenacious force you heard about in the interview, right? And his preference for working alone becomes clear, and he doesn't really like engaging team members. He lacks a sense of urgency. And guess what? Where you need somebody that is absolutely precise with numbers because of the business that you are in and the role that you have this gentleman assigned, he is not all that accurate. Could you have known? Could you have known? So again, it's about adding data. How could you have known that to your traditional hiring process? Because doing so doesn't have to be overwhelming. So there are predictors of success. Again, many of you already know these. Looking at some of them, the assessment we're talking about today measures 3 out of 6 of them. So PXT Select measures thinking style, behavior traits, and interests. And since it's not standalone, certainly you're not going to use an assessment as 100% of your hiring decision. Actually, according to the Department of Labor, it shouldn't be any more than 1/3 of your decision. It shouldn't be from your assessment. But a view of these combined with, again, your assessment of someone's technical skills, you're finding out about their work experience and history through their resume and interview process and the knowledge of the job. It can give you a real meaningful edge in hiring. So the selection process, again, is really about using everything right at your disposal that's appropriate to inform your decision-making process. of selecting the best candidate. And here's a sample process. Again, it can vary greatly, but the main point is that, again, an assessment like a PXT Select is one of several components. It's never the full decision. It's not going to magically provide a correct answer, and I know that there are some folks out there that really want that. Well, we all want that, but really think that it is out there, and it is not. And I do have folks that sometimes even use our DISC assessments, very appropriate as part of getting to know somebody. But DISC, again, it's not a valid hiring assessment like the PXT Select, but nor should it ever be used to completely dismiss a candidate or completely validate one particular candidate. So what it's about matching a candidate with the job. It gives you insight into how well a candidate is suited for a particular job. And again, we're going to get into detail about this. So using what's called the job fit model, it evaluates a person's cognitive abilities, behavior traits, and interests. And it reflects the three areas of what's called a person-environment fit model. There's a little bit of historical background there. The decision to focus on these three areas is based on findings in the field of occupational research. It dates back to the early 1900s, actually. A gentleman by the name of Frank Parsons developed the model for vocational direction. So it really was about, all right, how do you figure out what's the best vocation for you? It bottom line says people perform best when they are suited, they find a job that's suited to their abilities, traits, and interests. So when you can identify first what's required to be successful in a position, because that's the first step, and you have a view of a candidate's traits, then you can establish a job fit, and you can really see where they differ and where their strengths are based on the job that you're looking to hire. And organizational psychologists, career coaches, HR practitioners all agree that individuals perform best when they hold jobs that are suited to their traits. Again, it sounds like common sense, doesn't it? So it begins with looking at what's required for the job, and we do this through what's called performance models, and they are templates of jobs based on traits of people who have been successful in those jobs. And it's based on data from thousands of individuals, case studies, the Department of Labor's ONET databases. So the assessment is validated for selection. It's a validated and reliable assessment for selection. So let's take a look at what these reports look like. The first is the performance model. So you can see this is page 1. This is the kind of overview of the performance model. And where you see the colored bars, again, you look at the top part, it's going to measure verbal skill, which means vocabulary, verbal reasoning, which measures the ability to use words and reasoning in problem solving. Respondents are completing analogies there. Your numerical ability measures numeric calculation and abilities, and numerical reasoning will measure their ability to use numbers as a basis in reasoning and problem solving. So where you see the colored bars, that's where for this particular sample position, the ideal candidate should fall. And you'll see the bars are not real narrow. They can be narrow in certain instances if a particular style or trait is critical for that job. But generally, the bands are between 3 and 5 numbers. Once a candidate completes the assessment, which takes about 60 to 90 minutes, their responses are placed on these bars, and we'll show you that next. So this is what it looks like. And it looks like this again, this is the first page of, the overview page of what's called the Comprehensive Selection Report. So you can see this gentleman's initials are an OC, and it'll show you, we already went through what it measures in thinking style, and it looks like he is a 79% fit there. It goes through then the 9 behavior traits. And you see what those are listed, starting with pace, down through judgment. And then, of course, interests, your 6 interests are listed there. And you can see where on the right side at the bottom, it'll show you what the performance model was and really where this particular candidate, Oliver's, interests were. So you can see, for example, again, looking back at the behavior traits where he was met the performance model in pace, where in assertiveness he is much more forceful than the performance model is looking for. How are we doing so far? Just want to go to a quick whiteboard. Anybody have any comments, questions? You can also use chat. Anything going on here? You can also use, for those of you who, again, may be new to WebEx, if you click on your participant icon at the top bar, you will have the ability to raise your hand, or if you want to tell me to give me some feedback, if you want me to speed up or go slower, you can certainly do that. Any feedback here? How are bands determined for the role? That is a good question. The bands are determined, first of all, we have a library of over 135 performance models of jobs that come from 20 plus years of research. So it comes from our organization as well as the Department of Labor's ONET database on what traits do top performers in positions have. Bands can also be customized based on your particular roles, and we can talk more about how you do that in a one-on-one conversation. But just to give you an overview, you can have your top performers, if you can identify, for example, 6 top performers in a particular role, you can give them the assessment and then we can customize those bands for you, again, starting with a template. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. And again, if you want more information on customization, please get in touch with me after the webinar. So finally, again, PXT does measure the degree of interest. You'll see that at the bottom. That's my little green triangle there. And they're based on, again, a little bit of history. All this stuff goes back years on John Holland's 1959 RIASEC classification for occupational interests. So you'll see, you know, the interests of, you know, being technical, creative, financial, enterprising, people service, or mechanical. Enterprising, for example, enjoying leadership, presenting ideas, persuading others, as opposed to maybe a real mechanical, the enjoyment of building and repairing things, working with your hands, using machinery. So remember, Ben, if his manager had used a tool like PXT Select, perhaps she could have known, right, that Ben's numerical ability wasn't up to par. That's a pretty straightforward thing. And again, if you look back, I'll just take you back to this performance model again. You see here, it's pretty straightforward. Your numerical ability, you know, if Ben was outside of that bar, or if it was even a tighter bar for your particular position, you would have seen that pretty clearly that it wasn't where you needed it to be. Anybody else want to comment? Have you been in this situation? Again, just a whiteboard, any thoughts on Ben? All right. We've all been there. We have all absolutely been there. So just a closer look, we're going to go through these pretty quickly, but I wanted to give you a closer look at some of these areas in the reports. And by the way, our website has all of these reports that you can pull up samples, download, print, and get whatever you need there. So here is, candidates' ratings on cognitive abilities. Again, you can see a composite score, and then each area starting with verbal skill. And this section contributes 40% to the overall fit for the job for this candidate. So you can see he fits this pretty well. Actually, he has a higher verbal skill, a higher numeric reasoning. And we'll talk about, sometimes people think that, well, if everybody's to the right, that's great, where it can actually pose challenges for you. Again, in the behavior traits section, how this is measured, participants are asked to agree or disagree with statements of work-related preferences in these areas. And again, this contributes 40% to the overall job fit score. You can see again the examples. He fits pace. He doesn't so much fit that assertiveness. He's much more forceful than a person who has been successful in this job exhibits. And then again, the interests. Just a note on interests and how that's measured is participants are asked to rate, like, how much do you enjoy certain activities? And it measures their degree of interest in each of these areas. Interest doesn't contribute as much. It contributes just 20%. And that's because many times interests are satisfied outside of work, but it can certainly contribute and should be at least a consideration. So what does the candidate experience? Well, a candidate receives a unique assessment. It's unique for them because it's based on their answers. And again, if you may or may not be familiar with adaptive testing, but for example, in the cognitive section, candidates ask increasingly more difficult questions in response to correct answers, and they'll get easier questions following incorrect answers. In the behavior section, it's kind of presented in a similar format with increasingly stronger worded statements. If somebody says, I'm urgent, well, it's going to figure out just how urgent are they. Let me just give you an example here. So for example, in the cognitive section, it might start out with giving a person a moderate question. They answer that question correctly. They get a difficult question. Okay, that's correct. Another difficult, correct. They'll get a very difficult question until they don't answer correctly anymore. If that same person did not answer that moderate question correctly, it would have backed down and given them perhaps an easier moderate question and then an easy question or a very easy question. What it is really determining is a respondent's true score and their outside measure. The other side of it is that think about the experience from a candidate's perspective. If every candidate for every position was getting the same questions, how frustrating would it be for candidates to be getting very difficult questions when they are more, where they are more in the moderate area in terms of their verbal or math skill? By the same token, how weird would it be for somebody who is an expert in those areas to be getting the same amount of very easy questions that other folks would be getting? So it does cut down also on the assessment time and definitely gives candidates a better experience. And I think we all want that. No one wants, even for folks that you don't hire, you certainly want to leave them with a good impression of your organization.
Welcome. You've been invited to take a PXT Select assessment. When organizations take the time to match people with jobs that will bring out their best potential, everyone wins. That's why you're here. PXT Select will help you share your work-related behaviors, interests, and problem-solving abilities. That's right, there's going to be some math and some vocabulary. All jobs require some form of problem-solving. That's the reason for these questions. Don't worry if some seem difficult. The assessment is designed to measure the upper range of a person's numerical and verbal ability. No matter who you are, some of these questions will challenge you. Feel free to use a calculator if you wish, but please don't use any other outside assistance like the internet or your high school math teacher. This is not a pass or fail test. It's about understanding the fit between you and a role. You will also answer some simple questions about yourself and your interests. When responding to these questions, it's important to be yourself. There is no time limit for taking PXT Select. Most people set aside an hour, but feel free to complete it at your own pace. If you need to step away, don't worry. Your work will automatically be saved if you exit the assessment before you're finished. But be sure to remember your password so you can log back in with ease. Thank you for taking the time to complete PXT Select.
So let's take a closer look at some of the pages in the report again. Remember the sample for Oliver Chase, comprehensive selection report. This is, this is the composite thinking style. And you can see here, it not only gives you the rating, but it talks to you about what does this rating mean. So the composite score for him, the ideal candidate meant assimilating information with minimal confusion, handling more complex information, and he fits the model. So on numerical ability, the same, he fits the model. Where he is above the model, it's going to tell you that he is efficient, he requires little assistance, he actually analyzes numerical data at a more advanced level. So if you hire him, you'll see in the subsequent reports, you'll want to be aware that he may have unused talents. There may be areas where you could actually give him more responsibility, perhaps. And perhaps if you don't, he may not be challenged enough. Again, on behavior traits, you'll see the ideal candidate here in pace was very urgent on this assertiveness. It was more on the diplomatic side. And when we look at the comprehensive selection report, this candidate fit the model on pace, but was a little bit more assertive than the ideal candidate for this position. And again, we'll show you the implications of that, where how that really impacts the interview questions that are recommended. On the interests, again, it'll lay out for you what's the ideal candidate, what does their interest sound like, and then once someone takes the assessment, this is what it will give you. So this particular, you see on the left, for this particular job, the ideal interest would have been enterprising, people, service, and financial, but this gentleman has those three a little bit further down in his interests. They're sort of like 3 to 5. So here's where it really gets into of benefit. What is this all about, and how can this help me past showing me, where a candidate fits the job? Well, again, because the assessment is, the ratings on the assessment are a piece of it, this is going to help you with your interview process. So looking here, it's going to give you the areas of challenge for this individual, and we do this through a complex algorithm. It's proprietary that determines the areas where they were furthest outside the model, and then it provides questions related to those challenges. So let's look at an example. So again, this gentleman, much more forceful than the performance model. He tends to be fairly comfortable sticking up for his opinions and needs. So what you want to listen for is he willing, or how willing is he to soften that assertiveness? And here are the questions that you can ask him. When working with a team, how do you get buy-in if you think you have a good idea? And can you describe a recent situation where you felt it was best to defer to others or not take action? What was the result? What professionals find so helpful about these interview questions is it really helps to create consistency within an organization. How many times do you have more than one stakeholder and everybody's got their different ideas, and this is really a way to focus on the areas that you need to focus on for each particular candidate? Also, how many times do we say, oh, okay, we have to ask the same questions to each candidate? Why would you do that if everybody is different in their what's going to be their challenges or what is going to be their strengths for a particular position? So again, he's more forceful. He's also more deliberate, and he's above the performance model on verbal skill. So by the same token, it highlights their strengths, where they would best fit within the model, and again, provides interview questions there. So on verbal reasoning, he fits it. It doesn't mean you don't want to question there and confirm and really figure out if your interpretation is the same as this individual's interpretation, particularly on the, not so much certainly on the areas of skill, but on the areas of behavior. So you can see here again, it's going to say where he is most close, where the candidate is most close. And if you want to go further, and this is particularly helpful, where you'll choose particular areas because of your culture or unique challenges in that position. Questions are provided on all other scales, specific to how the candidate responded. So again, you know, you see the questions here. If you have, you know, if you have a fast-paced a really particularly fast-paced organization, and that's a critical area for you, even though this wasn't in this candidate's challenges or strengths, you may want to pull these out. All right, very quickly, I'm going to walk you through. Once you put a candidate through an assessment, it makes all 10 reports available to you. So this is the next report. It's a comparing candidates. So you can run, you can see here there are 5 candidates on this report, and you can compare them to each other. It gives you an overall comparison as well as plots them out on each of the thinking style scores as well as the behavior traits. So you can see here, you'll see Oliver was the highest on numerical ability and where everyone else fell. There is the sales reports were just introduced, and the nice thing about the sales reports is they speak in particular to sales individuals. So you'll see here it talks to a salesperson. It changes the language into sales. And sales reports can be run. Sometimes organizations will run or want to run sales reports because they are a highly driven sales organization. So even people that may work in operations or finance, they may want to run against a sales report. Back again to looking at the interest section, you'll see that in comparing, it will lay out where all the candidates fall in terms of their interests. You can leverage your process by running one candidate against multiple positions, and you can produce a comprehensive selection report for each of these positions as well. But this is really nice, especially when you have several openings in the same area, and you want to see where this person might fit most ideally. It's also great for for career planning, to really see and help someone understand how to get to the next level. And sometimes it's really great for, okay, if you haven't chosen someone for your organization for a particular job, but you've already spent a lot of time and money on them, and frankly, this looks like a person you would want in your organization, it's a great way to run them against other positions to see if there might be another fit for them. And there's the overview of the multiple positions report. So basically in the selection process, you've got a comprehensive selection report. You can run a multiple candidates report, multiple positions report, and that all comes from the start of it, which is the performance model. And now I'm going to talk about a couple other reports available once you decide to, you've got final candidates or you're deciding to bring folks on board. The first is that you can run an individual feedback report and an individual's graph. Depending on your culture, you may share with someone their results. If they're a final candidate, it's certainly a way to show them they've taken an assessment. What's come out of the assessment, the results interpretation. The results summary is usually, the graph is usually shared with someone once they start a position. But again, that is up to your organization as to how you might best use these reports. It's just a great way to get somebody to begin to understand, gain some self-awareness and begin to understand where their strengths and challenges may be in a particular position. And again, it's just a great way once you bring somebody on board to structure a first conversation. This just speaks in very, very nice language, what this person's composite score, what is it? It's a reflection of their overall learning, and what does it say about them? So how neat, think about it, to be a candidate for a position, to be hired, and for someone to share, with you, you're that interested in what kind of individual they are and how they can best work. There is a coaching report that, again, talks with managers and other individuals about how to best coach this person in the position given their responses to the assessment. So you can see here, what do you need to know about this person? He's an effective learner who may appreciate a challenge. And what are the management tips? So keep his workload and training opportunities challenging so he doesn't get bored and lose interest. How neat. How many times would you love to have a roadmap? As you progress with PXT Select and as more individuals in your organization take it, or if you see value in these types of reports, you can actually have a manager who is hiring for positions go through the assessment as well so they can run manager-employee reports as they hire individuals. And so you can see here it gives them where are they against their employee in each of the behavior traits. What does that mean in terms of how they can best work together? So you can see an assertiveness, where I am as a manager, where this new person is, and what does it mean? Well, I'm unassuming, this person tends to be forceful. How am I best going to manage them? Again, as you progress, you now have a team that has taken the PXT. You can begin to run team reports that talks to each individual on the team about where they are and what that means in terms of the team. So here, where is this individual on assertiveness? What does it look like for the entire team? And what does that mean to me as a team member? Like me, some of my teammates tend to be direct when giving feedback. So it means we're going to have to be careful to not bowl over those unassuming members of our team. And then it gives, the team report's neat because it does give a summary and an action plan. So again, on this assertiveness, take turns leading discussion so everyone has a chance. So again, the 3 reports for onboarding and development, coaching, manager-employee comparison. Those are the 3 reports to really use once someone is hired. How are we doing so far? I'm just going to open the whiteboard again. Chat, whiteboard, any questions? Again, my apology. Oops, are we still on audio? Okay. My apologies. We checked everything out ahead of time, so I am so sorry. And yes, when we send out the recording, I think I'll probably have to create another recording for y'all. We will send you the recording to the video that candidates see. So is it possible for me to take a trial test? If you write me an email, I'll see what I can do there. Okay, so getting back to let's talk just a little bit about principles of assessments, because there are principles that come out of what's called the Employer's Guide to Good Practices from the U.S. Department of Labor. Use tools in a purposeful manner. You don't want to rely too much on one test. You do want to make sure assessments used are appropriate for the target population. They've got to be understandable and comprehensive, and they're unbiased. And the PXT Select hiring assessment is valid and reliable and does adhere to the Department of Labor standards. Again, you know, it's got to measure what it claims to. It's got to be job relevant. It's got to help you make a more effective employment decision, and it's got to be reliable and valid. And again, we can certainly share with you the research report on the PXT Select. Making human decisions about hiring. Hopefully, you've seen how this can help you do it simpler and smarter. What I like is, I keep getting back to the word roadmap, but that's what I see. You've got the performance model that talks with you about what, we know what our job descriptions are, but what are the traits related to that job description? What are the traits and skills necessary and interests for a person to be successful there? It gives you the results through the comprehensive selection report, and it allows you to compare candidates with each other, and candidates to multiple positions. And then your individual and team reports to help onboard and coach someone once they're brought on board in that 30, 60, 90 days and ongoing. And again, once someone takes it, so you hire someone in a sales position, you can run their assessment against a sales management position a year later. You can run it against a director position, an executive position, another type of position, an operational position, general manager, really an unlimited amount. And that's really for one price. So all reports are available to you through one-time assessment of $295. There are volume pricing available, and we will set up an administrative account for you and make sure that your team is trained on the assessment and they're also trained on the platform to administer the assessments. We make it very easy. So thank you for joining me, and you can thank me by filling out our survey. I would appreciate it. I'm always looking to grow and develop myself and bring really the most value I can to you as customers, and for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, just the HR learning and development, talent acquisition professions. If you'd like additional information, please get in touch with me. I can send you the Department of Labor documents, links. Be happy to send you, again, the recording to the, you'll all get some recording of this. I'll probably have to do it again, but we'll send you the recording that candidates get when they take the assessment. Again, happy to spend as much time as you need to understand how to get this implemented in your organization. We will be doing another session in January. I cannot believe it's 2018, but that will be, let's see, January 25th, Thursday, January 25th. So if we don't talk before then, hopefully I'll see you again at that time. Thank you.